Okay,
Hey,
cool.
how's
Yep.
it going, everybody?
Mustache gang. Let's do it.
How's it going? What's up, Ricky?
So, Matt, I was just kind of getting into explaining parts and kind of like their use cases for it. Um, I was mentioning how originally I didn't understand parts that well. Let me get
Hmm.
rid of this. Just because I was just like, I don't know what's up with this. Let me make sure my reactions are off. Oh, good idea. There's some laser hands in here. Like with parts, I never really understood them at first, mainly because I was like, well, why would I want to change the pattern or keep the pattern the same and then just change all the samples? That made no sense to me. But then I realized that in each pattern or in each bank, you have the four parts. So I can build one song on patterns 1 through 4 and then switch to part two, which is basically song two on patterns 5 through 8. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Does that
That
make
seems to
sense?
be a pretty common approach, or that's an approach that I discuss with people pretty often is what they want to do with those parts.
Yeah.
It's like treat them like a digitakt kind of would, and that every pattern is its own part on the digitakt. And I think that's the reference a lot of people are using when they're jumping on the Octatrack, considering the digitakt's been out for a while now.
Yeah.
So that's usually my analogy is like think about it like a pattern on the digitakt, and you get four of these default sounds, and then you got to decide what to do with that. I mean, on parts, what I have to say about that, if I should I just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, please.
Um, what I think is so cool about parts is that parts, the reason why the Octatrack is so cool is because the Octatrack is extremely modular, right? And
Yeah.
parts are extremely modular, and
Yeah.
parts are really confusing at first
Yeah.
when you think about them in the app because they're so it's such an abstract concept that it's
Totally.
just you can copy and paste them, move them around, and apply them to certain patterns, and they're remembered in your pattern and all that. But they allow you to treat the Octatrack any way you want, and that's what I think is cool. So usually the analogy I do when I'm talking to folks about they're learning the Octatrack is think of parts as a drum kit.
Mm.
And the reason why maybe Elektron called them parts instead of kits is because some of the default attributes or the machines in there don't make sound.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
figured that's maybe why they didn't call them kits, but that's really what they are. It's just you get four kits and do whatever you want with them.
Right. And the kit's locked to the pattern, and in each bank, you have 16 patterns, and each pattern could be one of the four parts.
Right.
And yeah, so yeah, it is kind of like kits because yeah, but you're right. It's going to change your through tracks. It's going to change your record buffer settings, and
Yeah.
yeah, for
It's a
the
big
long,
deal
yeah,
to pay attention to like what's going on in your parts. Like if you do like a live resample concept, like if you're doing a DJ mixer type deal on the Octatrack, which is a really common setup on the Octatrack, if you switch from one part to the next part and the Octatrack's your master, and you go to or you switch from one pattern to the next pattern, and pattern two has part one in it, and it's supposed to have part two in it, then what
yeah,
you'll switch over to is just not what you intended,
yeah,
essentially. So you have to be really, you have to be paying
mindful.
attention. Yeah,
Yeah,
mindful for
for
sure.
maybe the first, I want to say 6 years of using the Octatrack. Would it be about 6 years? Yeah, probably the first 6 years. I just ignored parts. I was like 16 banks is enough. I'll just treat each bank like a song. But yeah, now it's totally different. I totally get it. There were so many different weird features on the Octatrack that at first I was like, why is this a feature? This is weird. Who thought of this? And then like 2 or 3 years later, I'd be like, oh my God, this just saved my
Yeah, it's a
life
game
in the live
changer.
performance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But
super sick. When I
with,
first got into the Octatrack, what drew me in was parts, actually,
that's hilarious.
because I was obsessed with Dataline. Like Dataline is who brought me over to Elektron, and I just loved the tunes that he was making on
Yeah.
hardware, and I was like, I was so stoked,
It's,
and I
yeah,
watched his
they're
tutorials,
so
and I
good.
learned so much just from watching him play live, and it was just the ability to grab a sound, record it, and then in the next pattern play that sound
Yeah.
different than the original sound.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. There's still not another machine that I know that can do that.
But with all this, let's listen. You before we went live, you were playing some tracks on your machines and showing us your like live performance use of the Octatrack,
Yeah,
and I would
yeah.
love to
Yeah,
dive
let me
more
show
into
you.
that.
Oops. Let me load something a little crazy.
Yeah, heck yeah, I'm super down with that. And to anybody in the chat, let us know if you have any questions. Just throw a couple of exclamation points, a couple of question marks at the end so we can go through them at the end. I see a couple. Derek, about avoiding clicks. We'll get to that at the end. Kind of chatting about parts now. All right.
Cool. So let me talk. Should I just explain what I have going on really quick, and then I'll give a demonstration of like how the Octatrack is essential in everything that I do musically.
Let's hear it real quick because it's
You want to
really
hear it real
freaking
quick?
cool.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, don't hear anything.
There you go.
There it is. Crazy. Oh my God. This is just like insane, absolutely insane. It's
Actually had these magnets made so I could remember where the type of effects that I made
yeah,
are.
yeah. Oh, right, because looking at it, you're just like, I don't know what it is. And you make these, right?
Yeah. I have the magnets made. I have like I made this because I used to write on tape all the time, so I made
Yeah.
a dry erase version. But yeah, so I build templates for the Octatrack that turn it into a live performance mixer, and like I try and write sets around the concept that the Octatrack is doing. So basically, I'll like if I want to do like a techno project, I build a techno performance mixer in my Octatrack. And like I start and I craft the music around that concept. If I want to do drum and bass, that's what this is. This was
Yeah.
my glitchy drum and bass. As you could hear, it was 170 BPM. Then I build a effects project around this one. This is a really complex project, using 4 recording buffers. 3 of them are live recording for like beat repeat effects. That's like instantly live recording, repitching, slowing down, time stretching, incoming audio.
It's crazy.
Yeah. This is a particularly nuts one, and is kind of my baby right now because I'm just like infatuated with how I can just press buttons. I know what I played earlier was like absolute destruction of this song. I love the song that I played.
Yeah.
And to like just blast effects the whole time isn't like necessarily appropriate, but for the demonstration, I think
Yeah,
it
for
works all
sure.
right.
I feel like there's this, because we're here at the office kind of talking about it as well, and just listening to like um, just like the human aspect
Yeah.
of like throwing yourself and your sounds into the music, is really interesting to me, especially with like hardware devices like an Octatrack or something, because when you're messing around on Octatrack, for example, you're throwing the crossfader and then like selecting what scene is playing
Hmm.
isn't quantized. Sure, it can be with the arranger mode, which we will not get into, but
You
like
can though if you want.
like there's just this like niceness of being able to get to a scene quickly or fast or smoothly, and that helps kind of add that live performative human aspect to the song, if you will. So it's just so cool to see like you're just playing this pattern, and the pattern might be like an 8-bar loop or it's in song mode or whatever, but there's all these like humanistic choices in the moment of what you're feeling, of what effect to bring in and when and for how long. I think that this stuff's really
Yeah,
cool.
that's what I love about the Octatrack. Like I always, how I view it is, and the Octatrack doesn't hold your hand by any means, right? And I really like that. There's some instruments where when you boot them up, they don't make a sound,
Yeah,
and you're like,
yeah,
what? But if you start getting familiar with the device and get really comfortable with it, you actually really like that part of it, where you're like, I got a blank canvas and I'm gonna get to work. And the Octatrack has some features that you just don't find in other uh, I don't know, devices in general. The
yeah,
crossfader being the thing, right? The
yeah,
crossfader with the parts and the scenes and the ability to live resample and the through machines and insert effects. All
Right.
this stuff is what makes this just so extremely unique. And the way I often view the crossfader is that this is 0 and this is 127. And
Yeah.
I always mute side A and kind of
Oh,
like leave the
smart.
dry audio. Also frees you up to having all 16 scenes as opposed to having 15 scenes as one being your like
Dude, I've worked
link.
here for I don't know how long now, and I completely forgot that you could mute scenes.
Yeah, it's really
Like,
helpful.
yeah. Because I always would leave one, empty, because I'm
Everybody
like,
does it.
yeah, but no, just turn it off. All right.
Yeah.
That's a pro tip. That's why we called you on the stream. And yeah, I think the crossfader is really interesting because, like you're saying, I usually try and treat this as my empty space, but then let's say on 16 it's completely clear. I'll use this
Mhm.
kind of as my playground. So in this track, let's say I'll go to B. There's nothing here, but now I can go ahead and figure out what I want to happen. So we can go here and then maybe here I can send this over. And then I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then just bring it back and then just go and clear this and just rinse and repeat. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the fun part about it is just having this weird little playground section where you can just go crazy and be like, let's see what this sounds like. It's decent, but I can always just go back to nothing.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I like about it too. And I mean, also you have so many scenes, you have all the banks and so many scenes to do, and each part you get
Oh
16
yeah,
more scenes. And
yeah.
so like when I find something I even remotely like, I just leave it there. And then I move on to another scene. And most of my workflow is make a scene that I really like, just the same workflow as like writing patterns in any Electron box or on any sequencer in general that's got a good copy paste type workflow is I'll make a scene that I really like, copy, paste the scene, and then iterate on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I like iterate on the patterns, iterate on the scenes. Then I'll do that again for my parts. Copy
Yeah.
part over, iterate on my part. And then I just have this like seamless sound. It's kind of like you reuse the same synthesizer all the time. You get like this cohesive sound. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of like how I like to approach the Octatrack as well.
Now here's something that's very divisive in the world of the Octatrack users. Do you start a new project for every song, or do you just have
Absolutely not.
right?
No way.
Okay,
That
yeah.
sounds like an absolute, you can't do that on there. Like, okay, here's
What
how
do
you
you?
do.
Yeah.
My argument for this is okay, I have a ton of arguments for why you should never do that workflow. And one of them is that if you're playing a live show, which is what this machine is for, like in terms of this is an opinion, my
It's
opinion
in the
here.
name. It says performance, right?
It says like, yeah, it's a performance sampler. And if you're gonna play shows and you're using the Octatrack, which is why I have two of them, is to play live. And when you are playing live on the Octatrack and you change projects, as we know, the audio stops.
Yeah.
That requires you to have an external device that either loops your existing audio or plays some sort of medley while you move to another project and wait for your samples to load.
Yeah.
To
That
me, it
is.
just seems like you're working against yourself.
Yeah. And I have yet to find a moment when I've been using a project and like I've maxed it out, where I'm
Right.
like,
Oh,
oh
dude.
man, I can no
Well, the
longer,
128 statics or flex slots,
yeah, that are what, like a minute and 30 seconds each or 2 minutes each or
longer,
something.
dude. You can load 2 GB files in the Octatrack on a static machine.
Is that what it is on each one?
I mean, yeah, it can stream 2 GB files from the compact
That's,
flash
I
card.
thought it was 2 minute files.
Mm-mm. I mean, it's
Wait, do
in the
you work
manual
here or
right
do I
now.
work here? I clearly don't know this thing at
Oh,
all.
sorry. You tell me. Okay, it's 2 minute files.
No, it's 2 gigs. I'm totally down with that. The whole time I just saw two, and then I was like, all right, it's probably two
I
minutes
mean, it
of
would take
it.
forever to load. It would be a
Yeah,
silly thing to do, but
but the
like,
fact that you could
yeah,
do it is
yeah.
hilarious. That's so funny.
You can't put them in a flex track or anything, but
Right,
statics,
exactly.
yeah.
Someone asked, so what is the project per live set? Project? Wait, what? The
The
project
live, what is a
per
set versus
live set?
a project
Oh,
versus
I mean, that's kind of
like
like,
why?
yeah, I think, I don't know if that would be, I don't know. I
I
think
wish
like we're saying, I'm glad you're on my side, which is, yeah, just have a project that then just goes live, or you just go play live with it, and it has like all the songs you've ever worked on in that one project. Maybe once a year I'll start a new project and be like, here's the 2023 project or the 2024 project. But even then, I still go back to like my,
I mean, that's what I do.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
like the
It's like a set for a year.
2022 2 live, 2022 2 live with an extra E, like, because I'll just copy them and be like, oh, let me just make a couple little changes here and there.
Yeah, and
But
another advantage of that workflow is that not only can you like write new music in the same set, not have to deal with the like transition problem of
yeah,
changing through machines, is
yeah.
that you get to iterate on your existing music
Hmm.
and you get to listen to it instantaneously without searching through projects for your tunes.
Totally.
Just,
And then
you
be
know,
like,
like you
oh, let
just
me
write
copy
faster.
that. Yeah, copy that one track part and put it into this new part, and that'll be like the transitional pattern to how I
Exactly.
get here, and yeah, all that stuff. Let's see what other folks are saying. Why can't we have independent patterns for each lane on the Octatrack? You kind of can.
You can.
Yeah. That's what I was about to
Oops, I'm
say.
sorry. I'm on the wrong side. Switch stuff.
Yeah, because on the Octatrack, you have where is it at? You have it in your track trig edits, right? Or not the track trig edits, the oh my God, I forgot where it's at because I never use it. Is it in the patterns? Yeah, right here. Each track can even be started to its own tempo, which is another weird thing. Like it can just
Yeah,
play
plays
whenever
free.
you want it. Yeah, it plays free. Or then you have the scale per track as well. So here's per track scale mode, and scale mode is technically just like your page length. This is the scale. It's not like C major, C minor. So once you set this up, then yeah, each track has its own pattern length. So for example, here we can just lower this to 2 out of every 16, but then this will be 44 out of every 48, and this one could be, whatever you need it to be. You can do some weird stuff. And then just have them all reset every 1021 steps. So yeah, you can just do some wild stuff with it if you need. But Matt, I think I'm more curious about your setup in
Yeah,
how it's like kind of routed,
sure.
if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
So the what like kind of got me cooking on the Octatrack is using it in the way that I do now, which I have two Octatracks, one for live performance as a performance mixer, and then I have one where I do actual production on the Octatrack. It's just loaded full of samples, and I have a battery installed inside of it, and I can walk around my studio and just plug stuff into
That's
it.
insane.
But on here, like the way I typically use it and the way that I like to share with people often is I take my drum side of my music. So in my case, I usually use the Digitakt 2 as my drum machine. And then I use either a Syntakt or a Digiton 2 at this point as my synthesizer. So like all my bass sounds and leads.
Mm-hmm.
And I run that into the C and D inputs. And then I take those inputs and I spread them across two buses. So it'll be like a through machine, set at unity gain and a neighbor track and a neighbor track. And then I get 6 insert effects, which also lets you build like incredibly diverse effects considering you have an LFO designer, which you
Yeah.
can do great stuff like
Do you
create
use that a lot?
unipolar negative LFOs and stuff. What's
Use
that?
use the LFO designer a lot?
Oh yeah,
Oh.
definitely. I use it for like you can build your own sidechain like
Oh yeah, that's true.
emulation that like looks like more of a sidechain, so it's got a little bit longer of a sustain at the beginning and then ducks.
Mm-hmm.
But also the Octatrack doesn't and I think even the Digitech, but the Octatrack doesn't offer a unipolar LFO. It's always a bipolar swinging LFO. So if you go into the LFO designer, I could just show you. If we go into the LFO designer, see this shape I have?
Yeah.
It's it's a negative shape. So you can
Yeah.
see I'm using this quite a bit, but I have this shape in here. And the reason it is because I don't want it to ever go above a certain point. I only want it to take a value down.
That's smart.
And so I want it to just bounce around 0 to this, whatever value that is. So negative 63 to 0, basically, I think
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
what this would do. So yeah, use it quite a bit. It's really useful. And you can use the same one on all your tracks too. Like you get 8 designs and all
Right, that
tracks can
makes
borrow
sense
them.
because like in the regular LFOs, yo, look how perfectly
Oh
that's
my God, that was
so
whack.
satisfying.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, getting super carried away. In the regular LFOs here, yeah, you have your wave shapes and stuff, right? But then when you're changing the depth, it is still like opening up positive and negative as opposed to just staying
Yeah.
below ground, which is actually super smart.
It's really useful for some ideas. It's usually not something that matters. Like in terms of like if you're modulating your filter cutoff or something, you do want it to like modulate up and down. Like that is a good sound. But if you're like trying to build a specific effect or like a gating effect, for instance, you can't gate with a bipolar LFO like the
Yeah,
Octatrack
yeah,
offers because you'll raise volumes and that sounds not good, right? We just want to go.
right.
So that's when I go into this section and start digging around.
Yeah, it's funny. If I ever end up needing to do something like that, I do I'll like, for example, if I want to do a tremolo kind of effect or something like that, I'll turn up the depth on my LFO, but then just lower the amp volume, and then it kind
Yeah.
of works in that way. But then to what you're saying, it's a little easier. And then in case you want to go do some mixing later, I always end up using my amp more than I do track level
Yeah.
to bring things up
Yeah.
and down.
I think of like amp versus track level versus is like amp is your dynamics for your sequence on the sequence, and track level is your overall mix of the
Yeah,
dynamics of the
that's true. Once
sequence.
you kind of get it dialed in, then you're moving the track level to fit it in the pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
I mean, that's my approach at least.
When you're designing these like performance effects that live across your bottom, that live across your bottom, uh, we're adults here. Are they all just on track 8, and track 8 needs to be set to master track, or is it like
No,
it's
no, not
across?
at all.
Yeah.
Not in this one particularly. It's a lot more complex than that. So when you hold down your scene button, it lights up and lets you know like what tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that this scene right here is using all of these tracks. This scene right here is, or go into here, and now this scene is using this track, this track, this track, and track 8. And track 8's not a master. And in fact, I avoid master tracks as much as I can because they just eat an entire track.
Yeah.
And I mean, I used to really like master tracks a lot because they just made things so easy to put like a high pass filter or
On
a low pass
everything.
filter effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for like quick effects, you know what I mean? But sacrificing an entire track for a high pass, low pass filter for me felt not good. I'd rather just like buy a high pass, low pass filter externally,
Mm-hmm.
and because I want to do my more production. But in the case of the performance templates stuff that I design, every track, like there's not enough tracks in the Octatrack for me,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
I want, more, at least 2 more,
Yeah.
if not 8 more, to like really do what I want to do with this machine. I'm doing as much as I possibly can. In fact, sometimes the Octatrack is like, you're doing too much. And it'll be like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
But I like to use even my flex tracks as effects tracks too. So like for instance, in this template, let me have something else play for a second though.
Let's see. We can't hear anything right now.
Okay.
I think you have the.
For instance, in this template that's doing these glitchy effects, this says stutter right here, but what
Oh,
it's doing is
Matt.
it's live.
We don't have audio from you. I think you have to hit
Oh,
the
my
setting
bad.
in Zoom
My
or
bad.
whatever. It's all good. There we go. Nailed it.
So for instance, in this template, when I hold down this scene, I'm just gonna jump through scenes because I want to jump into the scene like instantaneously. I don't want to crossfade. I want to do one swift crossfade to enter the scene, and then I want to jump through the scenes rhythmically. Like I want to pay attention to the timing of the music, and they are quantized, but it sounds better when you do it on the beat. And it's resampling. It's like sampling the music. So here's my playback trigger for the recording, and you can see my sequence is super short. And if you go into your recording, your sequencer becomes your recording step editor. And I'm not using a one-shot record trig like you typically would because it's replacing the buffer.
Yeah.
But this is sitting here on the 0, and this one is sitting here on +1. So it's recording and playing back immediately.
Oh, crazy.
And then, yeah, and so then I have this scene, turns the volume down on all these tracks and brings the volume up of the glitch track, which is recording these tracks, the output of these tracks. And then I have it set to record or length to time, which is something I think people avoid on the Octatrack or don't know what it does even.
Yeah.
And length to time is a relative value of your recording. So I have this set to different beat divisions, 2 or 4 or 6s if I want to do triplets, 8s and stuff. And then also time stretch applies to this as well.
Yeah.
And it does this. It sounds crazy, right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever thought that sound would come out of an Octatrack when they made it. That is so nuts. But it's, see, the thing that's crazy to me is like, for example, that weird setting in your flex track of time is
Yeah.
is a setting. So it's just
Yeah.
like,
It's permanent. Yeah.
but like the fact that that's even there to begin with to then allow you to go ahead and do all these other weird things with it, or those are those kind of weird features that I saw on the Octatrack when I first started using it that I was just like, what is this for? Like, why would I need
Right.
that? And then like when you come to that point where you're like, oh, I wish I could do this, you realize, oh, I think I can with this other little setting thing, right? And that's not even diving into like the personalized menu and all of that
Yeah.
stuff where you have a bunch of other settings in there too.
Yeah. Quick record mode. Turn
Yeah.
that on.
Yeah. I always
Record
thought,
quick mode or whatever.
yeah, something like that. I always thought that that was just on the Mark IIs, and people are like, no, that's been on there since the Mark One. I was like, oh, I just never turned it on.
It's so useful.
Yeah.
And really useful if you want to do the like live record and 8-bar quantized loop. You
Mm-hmm.
need that setting.
Let me check the
Or it's
chat.
more useful.
Yes, somebody says TI-80 Mark EZBOT is blowing Ricky's mind. 100%. Yeah, it's and it's so funny because like it's the Swedish Army knife where you can go down these deep rabbit holes of it and figure it out. Like I just want to like dive into this one specific use case of it. Like even John Wayne, for example, uses it
Yeah.
completely different from you and completely different from me. So then it's just like we each have our own little hacks and tips and tricks in there. Yeah.
So yeah, so many great producers that I've seen. I think like Radiohead uses an Octatrack in some of their performances, and which is one of my favorite bands. And just there's and John, yeah, John does a great job with the Octatrack. John's workflow is very similar to how I like to approach the Octatrack too when I'm using it as a production device because it's a phrase sampler, and if I'm going to use a phrase sampler, I want to capture phrases and chop those phrases up. And I don't think there's a single device, except for maybe like an MPC or something, that can kind of compete with how easy it is
Yeah.
to cut up a sample on the Octatrack.
Right.
But then the crossfader on top of that, how you can link the speed of the sample playback and the
Yeah.
pitch of it to that is just like, it's so human, like you were saying before, and like it's intuitive
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you do it, you just immediately get how to use the machine. And I
Yeah.
think that's what kind of makes it so special,
Yeah.
you know?
And there are these moments too with it that I know we're just, you know, loving on the Octatrack. I guess that's the whole point of this.
Oh, I do love it. So
Right. But like, there are these little quality of life features that I take for granted. And then like when I go to another device, I'm like, wait, you can't record while the sequencer is playing? Or like, wait, I have to hit
yeah.
stop first? Or like, wait, there's no quantized record? Or, oh, I have to, once I start recording, I have to hit stop. It's not going to stop for me exactly on the bar and then instantly loop that. And, like there's so many little things that I'm just like, oh, I didn't realize how much I needed this or like this. The
I
one,
think like
yeah.
kind of like if you are like an Ableton user or Bitwig user or Logic user and like you've gotten a nice workflow on there where you're like, I do this and this to sidechain here and I do this for sampling and I take that and I bring it down here. I think you can take pretty much all the ideas that you have from your DAW and you can port them mentally into this machine
Yeah.
and you can pretty much get them to function a lot of the time one for one.
Yeah.
And that's how I built what I've built on the Octatrack. There's all my inspiration comes from like watching EDM tips, YouTube videos, or some goofy
Oh,
YouTube
right.
channel. And I'll be like, they did this thing, and I'll be like, oh, the Octatrack's got this feature and this feature, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got an LFO, and you can set it to the trig one mode, and I'll do a one shot here, and it will do this, and
Yeah. Trig
or like,
first is the other good
yeah,
one.
trig, yeah, or yeah, exactly, and trig conditions,
Mm-hmm.
and you can make tape stop effects and tape speed up effects, and like you can do pretty much anything on it.
And I think the fun part about it to me is like I love problem solving and like these little
Yeah,
riddles. So there's this satisfaction about like doing something with your hands and you're just like, let me crack the code and you're just here working on it. And then when it works, you're just like, yes, that's exactly
yeah,
what I was trying to get it to do. And it like works perfectly. For example, you having the record buffer right on, but then the playback just one like 96th off or whatever PPQN it is to then like play it back instantly. Because that was one thing I was wondering about on mine too. Because if it is right on, it like is kind of empty because it's recording
Yeah, it'll play for like
exactly.
a second, and
Yeah,
then it
and
will
then it
stop.
turns off. I think it's because it's still trying to record into the buffer as it's playing at the same time. But it's so funny that all you need is that tiny bit of time,
Yeah,
and then in
for
the
you,
live,
you can play back the same pitch, and you can play back lower pitches. But then as soon as you try and play it, pitch it up, like
yeah,
it'll fail. But it won't fail if you keep moving that forward, forward, forward.
that's
Or if you put
hilarious.
that step on a step forward, you can
Yeah,
start doing some weirder stuff and bringing the pitch up.
that's crazy. Let me see if there's any other uh, questions in the chat. Everyone just wants a Mark III, as do I. When Matt can come into this format in the Elektron crew, let's see, how could they possibly justify it? I think one thing that recently completely changed, yeah, shout out to EZBOT shirt. You make those too, right?
Yeah, yeah, you can
Yeah,
snag these
the little
off
part shirts.
modbang.com.
Mod Bang. And that's where you have your the little templates across the bottom as well too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, the magnet and the stands that lift up the like I designed these for playing shows for my Octatrack because my cables, I like really like small portable setups. So
Yeah.
actually, me and my buddy made these like nice printed stands that let you. Anyway,
Yeah,
I feel like
they're
I'm doing
awesome.
a commercial.
We
I
have
don't
them
want
here
to
at
do
the
that, but
office.
it is something I use when I play shows.
One thing, yeah, we have them here at the office, and I have them at my stew back at the crib.
Sick.
One thing that you taught me that was super cool on the Octatrack, honestly, I love doing this. This looks so cool. Here, let's throw a little slow mix on there. Whoa. Okay, anyway, that you taught me on the Octatrack was using the cue as like this resampling zone,
Yeah.
kind of like how I talk about this being my playground. I'll use the cue as like where I want to just record and keep recording things.
Yeah.
It's so fun because like I'll try and do this extremely fast just to not waste too much time. But let's say, yeah, sure. I'll just put this here and then on two. Yeah, sure, why not? So we'll do this, and then I'll put a step here and another step here, and then I'll change the pitch here up by 3 semitones. So what do we have? And then we'll lower this.
I love that filter too.
Yeah, the secret is on the second page, the distortion, like on drums.
Yeah. Big time.
It's amazing. So like say we have something like this, if I go and I set up another like track 5 here to be a record buffer of, let's just, for not confusing everybody, record buffer 5. I'll say source 3 for our recording be the cue. And my favorite thing now is like, oh, if I want to bounce these 2 tracks down, I can just cue them and boom, they're here. So now if I go and I record this, right, I'm just recording this little section. So if I were to play back track 5 now,
Yeah.
it's like
And it will be at unity gain if you set not I don't know if you did or not, but if
the
you
amp.
set the Q level to 127,
Oh, right,
it'll
right, right.
record it at the right volume.
And then yeah, you're good to go. It's just like so fast to do that, and then you go in here and you're like, I don't know, you change it up into a different pattern, and then you grab these and you pitch them out somewhere else, and now you have this like, I can crossfade into this new live loop and then crossfade back to these which are cued, and it's
Yeah,
just,
that's
it's so cool
that's
because then I'll just assign basically every track to like the same cue record buffer, and I'll just keep grabbing stuff and bouncing things down and keeping it moving, keeping it forward, and just, I don't know, you end up, there's a lot of times where you'll end up in a track space where you're like, I don't even know what was the first sample I started with, but this sounds cool. So just hit record before it gets lost.
I mean, that is the workflow, I think. I know that that's a little uncommon, the Q-Bus thing. I mean, I only kind of stumbled upon that concept like a couple of years back now.
Yeah.
And it's it's definitely become like absolutely essential. Before I would use the master track to do that idea,
Yeah, same, same.
right? And then eventually I was like, what? Why am I doing the master track? I can cue and Unity the cue. and record that. But then, yeah, you can bounce. And then you can also, there's a copy and paste mode in here that has overdub copy paste. So you could actually do this without even doing what you just did. So you could just go in and just copy the whole flex buffer and paste it on another flex buffer, and it will do the same concept.
Wait,
Might even
what?
be faster.
What? What do you
Yeah.
even mean?
If you go into your copy and paste modes
Oh,
and go paste, not paste selection.
copy
Where is
selection
it?
right above it.
Change paste mode. Paste mode mix 0 dB. And that will just unity whatever you had on top of the other thing. So if you like really wanted to bounce down like kicks and snares, you could make a like a octachain and
Yeah.
then put another octachain on top of an octachain, essentially. So you could do like a kick and a hat and have that be on the same sample and then chop that up across your sequence.
And see
Like you
this,
could get
yeah,
crazy
that's the
by
thing.
your
This is exactly what I'm talking about. These are these weird hidden settings in here that I'm like, at some point in time, somebody in Gothenburg was like, what if we had a setting that allowed you to copy paste the buffer at mix 0 dB or -3, whatever it is. And they're like, all right, let's implement it.
it's yeah.
It's
I
so
also
insane.
like recommend this is just like I just want to say this for all the Elektron users really quickly. When you're chopping your samples on your Octatrack and you're using function, like if you have a sample in your recording buffer, which I think I do, yeah, there we go. If you hold function right and you move your playhead, it like
Zero?
aligns to zero crossings.
Yeah.
These zero crossings are on your left channel specifically. So like if you'll still get a pop in your right channel if it's a stereo sample. One way to fix this is to go into your change mode and change to stereo view. Then when you do it, you can actually see the zero crossing hitting on both channels.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've like I think this has been like really essential for me because I get really frustrated with pops and clicks.
Yeah. I know
And this is just another like hidden gem.
somebody was mentioning that earlier about how to avoid pops and clicks. And yeah, it's always a matter of like playing with the attack or this and the next, but having that stereo view is super handy. I'm trying to find that question that they had specifically. I think it was mainly like on long pads.
We shouldn't get, I mean, it's always going to be your zero crossings.
Yeah,
Like
for
if you have
sure.
you have to align the zero crossing at the beginning and the end. If you don't line the zero crossing at the end, you're going to hear it like it's at the beginning as it loops
Yeah,
again.
because that's when he comes back around.
Yeah, it's the same space. But if they're not lined up, if they're both not set up, like, and if they're not both on, if it's a stereo sample, again, you'll have this exact same problem.
Yeah, I love DJ Fauzi's question. It just says, octachain?
Yeah, what is that? Sample chain.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, that's so good. In your setup now, what's the routing of all the machines? I see you got the M8 little
Yeah,
tracker.
yeah.
You got what
I
is it?
have like a mixer on outside of the screen
Hmm.
here. And I run all the instruments into the mixer, and then I have but when I hit my bus B button on the mixer, it stops going live to my headphones and it feeds into my digitakt 2.
Hmm.
And the digitakt 2 is going into A and B and the digatone into C and D. And then it goes from there, if my mix is all set at 0, it goes to a through track, to a neighbor track, to a neighbor track, to a neighbor track. So this is just all straight effects for incoming audio.
Crazy.
And then we go flex track for a live looper, for a 4-bar live looper for going in and out of song to song.
Yeah.
And then over here I have these remix like insta remix and time stretch effects tracks. But this is an uncommon thing. Usually what I would have set up is a through machine, and a bunch of neighbors, and then a recorder track for transitioning, and the other tracks would be like filters and
Yeah.
automated filter sweeps and stuff like that for techno and house production.
That's cool. I like using the neighbor tracks. I recently just started getting into them, especially when you're using it as like a live mixer because you want to have a couple more effects on there, right? Or you're like, oh, I always want a compressor, but then I
Yeah.
need the reverb, but I like the dark reverb, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah, it
yeah.
just gives you that flexibility. And for those of you who don't know, the neighbor track just allows you to send audio from the previous track into the neighbor track and have another set of filters and delays and effects and even its own sequencer, so you can do some really cool gating stuff as well. I'm sure you've done that too with like a through track, and then you just put a bunch of like 16 step like to kind of like
Yeah.
gate it out. I've done that before.
Yeah,
That's
it's
always
really
fun.
cool. And you can throw down like 4 on the floor and then do an inverted exponential envelope and then
Yeah.
have it duck. Like if it's
Yeah.
synthesizers coming in on one side and drums on another, you can duck the drum or duck the synths,
Yeah, it kind of reminds me
which
of
whatever
that
sequence you want.
the effects block in the Syntakt, where
It's
it's like,
exactly like,
you
yeah,
know, you
that's
just send it
exactly
in
how I
there,
approach it.
and now you have a bunch of other settings for everything going through that moment. Let's
Yeah,
see.
it's incredibly dope.
Somebody says, is quality of sound on Octatrack Mark II noticeable? I'm guessing noticeably worse than Digitakt 2. I don't think so. Um, I will say with Digitakt 1, I was like, yeah, mono samples, that's fine. I ain't tripping. And then I took a huge sample from the Octatrack and recorded it into my Mark 1 Digitakt, and it got summed down to mono, and I was just like, oh, I see why people are so hardcore stereo samples now. Because it was like this
Yeah.
giant wide pad, and it was just like, you know, straight down the center. And sure, you can throw the chorus and stuff in there to kind of widen it up. But no, between Digitakt 2 and Octatrack Mark 2, I don't think there's a big difference. They do sound different, but not by
I
like.
mean, mine is running into my Octatrack, so it's like what it sounds like is
Yeah.
what the Octatrack sounds like because it does, that it goes through its converters and it is what it is
Yeah.
at that point. And to me, you can't really tell. I do think that like over when you overbridge from your digi devices, any digi device, and you go overbridge, the quality of sound is impeccable.
Yeah, because
Like
it's never converted. It's just
it's
straight
amazing.
across.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I think it's kind of what it puts these devices like all of them at flagship tier level to me
Mm.
because overbridge is out of control to have.
And my big thing too with the overbridge is you don't run into that like, all right, well now what, groovebox moment where like you make a track on something cool and you're just like, wait, now I gotta mute everything and record it in one by one, and
Or bounce it to stems and export.
yeah, exactly. It's just such a
Even though
chore.
it's like
It turns
useful.
into like having fun to like a task, and I'm like, I'll do this
Right,
later.
right.
Which is also why I end up using on Octatrack. Somebody mentioned this, like any tips on using the Octatrack with Overbridge, because it does not have Overbridge. This came out 15 years ago. I usually end up just having another machine, and I'll just go out of this into that machine, and then like in Overbridge, I'll just say open up a track for the inputs of whatever machine it is, Digitakt or Syntakt or whatever. Then I end up getting like audio over USB from here into that machine. But it's funny how I always run into this issue, which I'm sure you've probably dealt with, is do I send the Digitakt into the Octatrack or the Octatrack into the Digitakt?
Or both. That's what I like to do. So I'll send the cue out of the Octatrack back into my Digitakt. That's what I like to do.
Yeah.
And I turn off monitoring on the Digitakt at that moment,
Yeah.
and then I can process my Digitakt through the Octatrack and then bring it back into the Digitakt and chop it up on the Digitakt.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is like that's been my bread and butter for like the last 6 months. I've been going crazy on that.
Yeah, I've been
Especially,
trying to
yeah.
figure out the way to do that too, because then it's like that you kind of run into this chicken and egg situation where you're like, okay, well then how do I bring audio in to begin with if they're just so like in and out, out and in? But
Yeah.
what I've
Snake eating its own tail thing.
yeah, but what I've ended up kind of super loving, mainly because of Mario, is doing audio over USB off of like an iPad into the
Yeah.
Digitakt. And that has been like super nuts. Like I've been exploring a lot of the effects and stuff inside of Logic or monitoring through there, or even just saying like, all right, record audio from the USB and I'm playing a sample on YouTube or something like that, and I can just grab it straight in and it's just like good to go. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's another like secondary input, when it comes to
Yeah.
the two kind of being mingled up, if you will.
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
There it is. Got the split screen. But let's see, is there any other questions? Dude, this time flew by.
Yeah. It always goes by so fast
Everyone's
doing
asking,
streams,
where's
just like they're super fun. It's such a good time to talk about this stuff.
art?
It's hard to find people that are as interested in this particular ecosystem and as you are, right? And just in general. And when you find somebody who like clicks with you on this and they're like, I'm hyped about flex machines and I'm
Yeah,
hyped about through machines and like these musical concepts that you can come up with,
right.
conversation just goes.
I know, because then you're like, I can finally talk to somebody.
Yeah, I
I'm not a
finally.
weirdo. Yeah. I had a similar experience one time at NAM. I said like, "Oh yeah, something something MPC 4000," and then I just see somebody slowly turn around. I was like, "Did you say MPC 4000?" You
That
know?
guy's just like, I love you.
Yeah, exactly.
I need you in my
And
life
we're
right now.
still great friends to this day. Yeah, and it's
Awesome.
funny. It's the same thing with the Octatrack, because like it's one of those like, "Oh, you use the Octatracks? So tell me, do you use parts and how?" You know, and it's just like you just want to soak it in, and like I feel it's it's kind of like sweeping. It's easy to learn but hard to master. You know, you can't like fully perfect it
I like
forever.
that.
Yeah, but like you can do it and you'll have
Yeah.
fun. But there's still so much more to learn and just like improve, because like I've noticed even with your performance templates, every time you come out with a new one, it's like you're just ratcheting up the good and the efficient and like the way it works, and like, oh, maybe it
Yeah.
did these weird clicks this one time, but what if I nudge it over a little bit, and like you just
I
kind of keep
recently
honing
came
it.
across something just like that because I'm in the middle of working on a new one right
Yeah,
now that
yeah.
uses 4 free flex tracks on the Octatrack, so you can use your Octatrack typically, like or a typical production
Oh, cool.
perspective,
Yeah.
and then also process those sounds through the effects blocks because you can't route audio in the
Hmm.
Octatrack, but you can take your cue out and run that back into your Octatrack. So you cue the
Yeah.
tracks over there and run it through your effects. And so using studio mode, I've kind of got it set up in a way that's like just super user friendly.
Hmm.
And I'm excited to finish the project, but because I've been working on it all month. But yeah, I'm keep running into those things, and I feel like it's another step up, right? Where I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, if I use studio mode with the queue, I don't have to hold Q and select the tracks;
Yeah.
they're already queued. I'm like, this is great.
That's so good. Any other questions? I know everyone's excited. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. Make sure to check out
Oh yeah, thanks for
Modbang,
having me.
his
Stoked.
site. And let me see. Let me run through any other. What are your favorite? That's a huge question. Someone says, "What's your favorite trick or a feature that is unique to the Octatrack that it exists?"
Live resampling.
Yeah, live resampling to me is the nuts one. I did a whole um, hour and 45-minute set with just this and like a small modular system. And all I did was crossfade to the live modular, resample 4 bars of it, crossfade to the loop, repatch my modular, cue it. Yeah, that sounds good. Crossfade to the modular, resample, boom, repatch, boom,
You
resample.
say this like that's easy. That is not that is not an easy process. I mean, that is what's cool is that you can do that.
It's a
That's what's
simple
cool.
setup. It's a
It's a
simple
simple
setup.
setup. It
Yeah,
is an
but you got to
overwhelming
set
thing
it
to
up.
do in a live situation. I do think, but repatching your modular live, just you saying that out loud is
Oh.
like, who does? Not everybody does that. That's for sure.
Well, then you got to work on your modular system, because I was just like, all right, there's
No
a couple
doubt,
little
no doubt.
things. Yeah. But just like,
No,
that's probably my favorite feature is live resampling without the sequencer stopping, and
yeah,
it just keeps moving. You don't have to stop. You can the Octatrack is my favorite thing to bring to like a jam session when
totally.
someone's just like, "Oh, I have some drums and a guitar and like a keyboard. Let's make some music." I grab the Octatrack because I'm like, "All right, I'll just process you." And it just
Yeah,
turns into this crazy thing. It's almost like, because in that situation, I almost end up using it like a DAW, because then I'm like, all right, let's track like an 8-bar loop on track 1. All right, let's get the drums on 2. All right, let me resample that and bounce those 2 down. Oh, here's this new weird rhythm. You want to hop on the piano and we'll run that into 3, and it's just like this insane thing. Octatrack's nuts.
what,
Ah,
13, 15 years? Is that what the 15 years of it being absolutely nuts. We didn't even talk about pickup machines. Like
yeah.
this thing
Oh
goes
yeah.
into another dimension.
Yeah. The pick-up machine thing, I've been wanting to like, I understand them, I get it, but I'm still trying to be like, oh.
Like
That's the
what do I use
hyper,
them for?
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the super duper total use case for
I
them.
think of the
Because,
band type situation.
yeah,
That's where
because
it really shines, I
for
think.
me, I still like having the flexibility of the flex tracks and having a record buffer to be able to just kind of like go and then be like, all right, I like this. Let me just save it into another track and just chop
Yeah.
it up and do something crazy. And then like still go back. But where the pickup machines, it's like, no, you're just building, building, building. And then, but it's cool because you can do the overdub and the live looping stuff and like keep building into tracks, especially if they're like listening to other tracks. Yeah,
You can
it's,
also save the pickup machine recordings like as they're happening and then assign them
yeah,
to other machines.
that's pretty cool too.
Not something I do, to be honest. It's
Right.
just something you can do. It seems like it's a more difficult procedure.
Yeah. Let's see, anything else? I think that's about it. Um, yeah, someone's like, you didn't even talk about the ARP. That's a whole other thing.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
sick. Yeah.
But yo, Matt, I appreciate you so much for coming on. Where can people find some of your stuff?
Oh yeah, if you patreon.com/EZBOT if you want to pick up my performance templates for the Octatrack, or coffee.com/EZBOT. You can always check out the channel if you want to learn how to
Yeah.
make this stuff. It's
Yeah.
all free.
Awesome,
Free
awesome videos.
info.
Yeah, seriously. And all the stuff you have on like digitakt that you've been coming out with too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been super
It's my
cool.
favorite machine. I mean, the Octatrack is my favorite device, like utilitarian device.
Yeah.
In terms of music production, probably a Digitakt 2 is like where I'm at.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I'm right there with you. Like there's moments where the Digitakt was doing more stuff for me that I was kind of doing on the Octatrack already, but there's so many things that the Octatrack can do that the Digitakt just can't. That I'm just
yeah.
like, all right, well,
I mean, I
I
have to have an Octatrack. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
literally.
like a different thing. It's having an Octatrack's like having a power cable. It's like it's just
It's like a
necessary.
VCA
Yeah,
in your
like I just
modular
need it.
system. What are
It's
you going to do without it?
a non-starter, right? It just
Yeah.
is part of the setup. What else comes with it? Yeah, that's exactly how it is for me. And I have two as well for the same things.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Because
talking about.
like I don't need to, but
You
it's
need
one of those
three.
like I want to do a live set where it's two Octatracks mixed by an Octatrack.
That's
So,
what I'm talking about, dude.
dude,
Yeah. Or
let's
just
do
one
it.
or two, and you can mix into each other and do weird back and forth stuff.
Oh man, I'm so
Some
amped up
ideas.
right now. All right. Well,
Thank you
anyway,
very much for having me.
yeah, of course. I'll catch you soon, everybody in the chat. Thanks so much. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'm sure I or Matt will jump in there and answer some comments whenever we got some time. We appreciate all of you for coming by. Check it out, elektron.se. See y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.